Continuing on the service issues with Time Warner, I recently found some problems with not video throttling, but just kind of like speed issues. And it was kind of vague at first. It wasn't very uh, important to look into it until it got pretty bad. And it just seemed that my speeds tailed off over the last month in December of 2014. My speeds, especially my upload speeds, when I uploaded these very YouTube videos, I noticed just a significant drop off by the end of that month. Now, I had signed up from the cold call from a woman who did say she was in California previously 3 months before, back in September, and she had told me, quoting the speeds I would get, as 30 megabits download and 10 upload. That's a good package for $89, even though I had to contend with unwanted telephone service, and I am going to have to buy my own hardware now, all of it. So it was okay at the time, but it had dropped off. My download speed had dropped off to below 20 megabits per second. That's great for grandma and grandpa. It's not good at all, or even really tolerable if you're paying for 30. So, and I was getting 5 consistently. And the websites I use are like Speed Test. I use 3 or 4, not Time Warner's Speed Test, by the way. I use Speakeasy and Speed Test for the most part. And looking for more every day. And I'll put those links in this description as well. But I was finding 18 megabits per second download speeds consistently. I don't just run it once, or even once a day. I would sit on my hands and patiently run these tests for days on end before reporting them, before even calling them about it. Because sometimes it is a local network maintenance issue. And as a sideline, I'd like to mention that here's something that's made Time Warner rich. You never will find them giving you a refund for poor service. That's something I always found interesting. You have a service which is barely quantifiable, or certainly it can be overlooked, the quantification of it. People for years didn't even understand that the internet can be doled out in an amount, not just the speed of it. Well, streaming changed that. Cloud data use changed that. But what you find more and more is that Time Warner ekes by month after month, and their eking is making them billions monthly. So you'll never see en masse them doling out a massive refund because, hey, our service was admittedly crappy last month, and you caught us, consistently. You have screenshots and even video screenshots of these tests that you've run, and you reported them to the BBB. I've done that. I had to do that from issues that were resolved a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago, and I never even saw them offer me a refund. Not ever, not once, not even a minimal one. Not even if I figured it on a percentage basis, did all the headwork for myself. Not until I taxed them with the BBB reporting and just put the BBB on their back. And you want to see somebody who will work for you, that's still a great thing in the United States, is the Better Business Bureau. They don't get paid to do it directly by us, but as a consumer watchdog group, they've been the best to me. When they failed, there was a reason, and I find myself easily accepting it because they've helped me so many other times. So it's great to put them on somebody's back. They will it's like putting a little monkey jockey on somebody's back and just strap them until they get some results. All right, we lied. We'll give you your money back. But Better Business Bureau or not, Time Warner is never going to volunteer any refunds. I find that very interesting. It's striking considering how these people probably live in their 1%. So, recently I found my upload speed was having issues. I checked my speeds on the various sites and found I was consistently just getting 5 megabits per second upload speed, and like I said, 18 download. That's not great. I'm paying for 30, 10, okay? 30 down, 10 up. And I called, and I got a bad customer service rep. He was a smarty pants. He was a younger dude who thought he had an old idiot. And, maybe the internet was slow in your day. Well, you should have. His attitude was like, well, you shouldn't be complaining. You're old. You had dial-up. That was his attitude. And toward the end of the conversation, he was actually kind of snickering at me when I insisted, and this was the truth, that I had actually had 10 megabits upload speed on my internet for the past 2 months, and that suddenly it seemed to have been throttled. Well, that came, as usual, with one of their with their provisioning. If I'd had my own equipment, it probably would have happened as anyway. But I think that it was easier for them to do it because I was using their equipment, and they just came through and just swept through, and suddenly I had 5. And my internet, my modem, their gateway that I'm using will definitely do 10. And he clarified so by saying in the conversation, well, you're provisioned for 5. That means that you signed up for 5, and that's what we're going to give you. And I was like, well, I was very insistent that I was right, but I said, here's the way I said it. I know I'm right, but I think it might be the end of your day and nobody needs a bunch of arguing. It will be okay for me to deal with that, but I would like it registered that I am insisting that I am correct on this, because I measured my my internet speeds for weeks back when I had some other issues after first signing back up, and it was definitely 10 consistently, and I do mean every single time right at 10, 10.14, 5.6, whatever. But this was something that I found interesting. You can get a bad tech and it'll ruin your day, a bad customer service rep, and they can even sound knowledgeable, even though they might not be putting you through to a tech. You may have a customer service rep who's just like David Spade. Bye-bye. Yeah, he can just have an attitude, or she, that will ruin your experience, and that's all Time Warner's fault. Interestingly enough, it is because they're so huge, it is their fault. And because they do have the resources to hire, I don't know, the retired Mickey Mouse from Epcot, somebody who's better, cheery, upbeat. I've got those people before, and it's great to deal with some of them. But this guy was a turd. He was a smart aleck, and he told me basically I was wrong. He was right, and he wasn't going to listen to me. So that was interesting, and that's another negative experience. That they're trying to deal with their corporate image of having 3 or 4, 5, 10 years in a row where they're listed among the top. And now last year they were the top, the worst companies in the world about customer service. They put out a press release saying, we have come to the awareness that that we're crappy people. We need to fix ourselves. And we're doing it. For a while it seemed that way, but it just doesn't seem that way after all. You had your doubts. Those doubts are justified. Finally, my overall statement. Okay, I've talked about billing briefly. I've talked about hardware and service, and how the hardware is actually pretty poor compared to the other industries involved in the media industries, television and stuff like that, compared to the Hopper in particular. And I think they could do better. I've even Googled whether the Hopper would work with Time Warner, which would be interesting if someone could figure that out. It might save their company if people began buying their own DVRs and pairing them with Time Warner's service and billing. So basically, overall, they need to work harder. You have the package deals being doled out by people in other regions to your region where you may not even have that deal available. I actually had a customer service or a telemarketer call me from Time Warner years ago, 6 years ago I think it was, and no, it was 4 years ago when I first moved into the place I'm in now. And at the end of the phone call, she put me on hold for 10 minutes, and the report I got back was a bad one. She had sold me a deal and held me on the phone for like 10 minutes just to talk about the stupid deal. And when I finally accepted the deal, when it sounded good enough, and I had enough information, she puts me on hold for 10 whole minutes, comes back on and says, I'm sorry, my supervisor has informed me that we don't offer that deal in your area. Now, Time Warner needs to fix that. They're too big not to. That's all. Their services and their fees need to be more stable. Otherwise, their customers are going to keep going to their own hardware. And Time Warner needs to be accepting of this. That's the problem. They're like an alcoholic on money. They're so greedy they can't stop wanting more money for a service-based industry that they're really, no human being there ever does any real work, except their receptionists and their money handlers and their techs. And also, they have a uh, they have a subfield of techs versus contractors. This atmosphere where if you've ever worked with multiple different guys coming to your house and you mention, well, this guy came by last week, he'll say, you may get a guy who rolls his eyes if you mention that the previous guy was driving his own vehicle. There's a big difference between a tech and or a contractor versus a tech. A tech will drive up in a Time Warner van, whereas a contractor will have his own van down by the river, perhaps, and they have bad attitudes. They don't know as much as they think they do or act like they do, and they're ignorant compared to true techs who may not know as much as you. And people, how bad would that be to learn more and know more than a tech? For real. Even if it takes a lot of hard research online and personally reading a few books and getting involved with it yourself. Experience. You have the experience with being a consumer. How hard would it be, and at what point would you have to test to find out when you're as smart as a local Insight Tech? The ideal situation would be for us all to become as first of all, to reach a tier where we understood the techs who came by. They're the hardest working people in that industry, and kind of get a better feeling and understanding of what they do. Have a little empathy for them. At the same time, it will work in our favor for us to know more than their techs, because they're actually running the industry. If all of those people were one person, forget 1%. They would be the 0.0001%, because in that industry, without them, nothing would work. Nothing. Your TV, phone, or internet wouldn't work. Lastly, I want to say more about the hardware. Their hardware stinks. Time Warner's hardware has gotten so bad that it's just like the contractor who hooked me up was bragging about the UB device, and the way he did it was so funny. It was like a kid who got a toy out of a claw machine. He goes, well, I said, these UBs seem to be very sophisticated, and it's a gateway, isn't it? And the guy looked at me. Otherwise, he seemed pretty full of himself, and he seemed smart, but it was an act. But he looked at me and he said, well, they are from Japan, and he was bragging. And I'm thinking, millions of cars are from Japan, and they have trouble stopping. But great things do come from Japan. They're very competitive. But it's not something to brag about here in Japan. It would be, up there, maybe, for them to. They did reach heaven first in South Park, but the thing is, they need to get hardware, whether it's Japan made or Montana made, that is on par with the Hopper. That's just what I'm going to say, because I can. They couldn't even say that probably. The truth is, until they do, Time Warner's going to have a hard time getting and keeping more customers, and especially keeping them happy. Otherwise, they need to be more honest about their services and about keeping those services running for their customers, because really, they are services. This is a service-based industry, and they're actually having to work less if you look at it that way. If I was the head of the FCC, I would look at, or the FTC, either one, I would have a very critical eye towards these corporations where they say they're providing a service, because, oh yes, what are you doing? Please tell me, what have you done? Oh, you sat on your yacht and dictated some little bugger in a local office to dole out or to improve their server and to, charge your customers more. That's not a service. That's a disservice, or that's crazy. So basically, what services are they providing? I think the most action you see in that industry, physical action, is the rolling around of vehicles. Otherwise, you may see lines being installed, but the only infrastructure they're improving is something geared towards their own ends. That's very intelligent for them, but there's still short-term gains that these people are looking for. You'll look at the men at the top, they probably don't even have grandkids they're looking at. And that's one of the main things that I'd like to close with. That they just need to get better hardware. They need to improve all around. But so this hasn't been so much of a rant as it tries to explain some of the things that customers are encountering, and suggestions that a very knowledgeable customer might have, does have for that industry, because they're going to fail, and the failure is going to come pretty quickly. They're going to fall like really quick when they realize, in our area, we were a hot zone for internet interest, rural internet. If you want to look at what's going on in the internet world, look at rural internet activity and actions by local municipalities moving towards deals with Google and other companies to promote fiber-based internet services, FiOSs. Those are coming in, and they'll be very competitive with these. You see Time Warner already just falling all over themselves to get this technology in place, but in the end, the rates for similar or even better services are going to be in place soon enough to undo them, really, no matter how much they fight. And they might as well improve their customer service. Locally in Bowling Green, Kentucky, we are going to have, we just received a grant and state funds to promote basically a municipal type internet service that's going to be in place in the next 2 or 3 years here, where we're going to have FiOS. So this is a very good improvement, and I'm looking forward to signing up really quickly. And I don't think I'll mind it as much going, even if I can't use it for things like live TV. If I have to, I will turn off my Time Warner TV services as well and go back to the old grandpa style antennas on the roof. Over-the-air antennas aren't so great in this area because we don't have as many channels as they do in metro areas, but that's a whole nother conversation. Otherwise, I think Time Warner just needs to work on its act and its actions towards its customers.